All right then. All right, so now as we have started the recording, we want to welcome everyone to this event to Product as a Service and how to find your strategic advantage. And this event is hosted by Leneo and Stena Circular Consulting, and we will start in just a few moments. If you like, you can use the QR codes you see on the screen to learn more about us on our web pages. I see that the time is quarter past, but maybe we can wait a little while longer to see that more people are joining. And if I said before, you can use the QR codes you see on the screen to learn more about us. And also, if you like, you are welcome to introduce yourself in the chat. Maybe your company, your role, and maybe share your specific interest in this topic. But we will wait just a few more moments to see that more people are joining. Okay, so looking at the time here, I would say it's maybe time to start. Or should we wait a little while longer? Felicia or Peter, what do you think?
I think let's go ahead and start.
Yes. Oh, and the ones who will join later. The recording will be available afterwards as well. Yes, so let's start then. So again, welcome everyone to today's seminar on product as a service and how to find your strategic advantage. And you might have come across this concept before in other terms, such as pay-per-use, product service system, or user-centric models, or servitization. But we will keep to the term product as a service today, or PaaS even. All right. See if I can change the slide. Yes, so we are the ones speaking today. It's me, Stina, and we also have Peter and Felicia. And we're from the organization Stena Circular Consulting, a consultancy firm dedicating to enable practical, profitable circular business solutions. And we have done a lot of research about product as a service and coach companies in their transition. So today we will give you a few insights from that work. And Leneo is a software provider handling contract and invoicing for rental and leasing and product as a service businesses. So some housekeeping before we start. We will do our best to have time for questions in the end, but you feel free to share your reflections or thoughts or comments in the chat as we go along. All right. Let's see. So this is the agenda for today. And we will try to give you a quick introduction on products as a service. And then we will also talk about how to identify the right servitization model and how to finance it. And finally, also how to take the first steps towards implementation. We have these 4 parts ahead of us. But first things first, maybe. We will start with the question, what is PaaS and why is it relevant? Let's see if my slide changes. Well, adding services to products has gradually become more common across multiple industries. We have tried to, she's going to show this here in this graph. So in some sectors, they are starting to explore this offering of products as a service, and some segments are more mature. So in the more mature segments over here to the right, we can see this in office printing with Canon, for example, or jet engines with Rolls-Royce. And they, as we know, offers engine as a service. They sell flying hours instead of engines. But we can also see this in industrial equipment, for example. They are scaling these kinds of business models. So we have Kaiser, and they now deliver compressed air as a service instead of just air compressors and the equipment. So this allows their customers to access compressed air without having to actually purchase the equipment or maintain the equipment. Instead, Kaiser, they installs, they maintains and manages all of the equipment, and they charge their customers based on their air consumption. Looking at the more piloting stages or emerging stages, we have other sectors. For example, we have heating, fashion, and lighting. And a standout example here is Signify. They have evolved from selling just lamps to offering paper-lux lighting solutions. So their customers, they don't pay for the lamps or the cables or the controls. Instead, they pay for the actual performance. So it enables a flexible and personalized lighting with adjustable illumination and monitored energy use. So in conclusion, the shift towards service-based business models is reshaping how industries create value for the customers, but also for themselves. Yes, and why are companies doing this then? And why are they implementing product as a service? Well, we believe that it can be boiled down to these 3 things. So the first is closer customer relationship. Second, we have profitability and competitive advantage. And third, we have higher resource efficiency through circular practices. And we will briefly touch upon all of these 3 reasons, starting with closer customer relationship. Yes. So looking at this first reason, we see that product as a service, these business models, they can create closer customer relationships, for example, as they enable an ongoing dialogue and collection of insights from the customers. It helps companies understand their customers and adapt to their evolving needs or preferences and deepen the relationship. Product as a service, it can also help to broaden the customer base and unlock new customer segments by removing barriers, for example, as upfront cost for the customer. And one example here you can see on the screen is the company Transparent. They are a provider of speakers. And we have interviewed them during our work with product as a service. And for them, this type of business models, it's made them reach more customers by reducing the upfront costs when they have changed the business model and changed the payment solutions, for example. Yes, and looking into the second reason of profitability and competitive advantage, we can see that product as a service, it can improve the stability of revenues and reduce exposure to unpredictability of demand. And services, they can say that they're more difficult to replicate maybe than products itself. So each service can be tweaked or it can be made unique in one way or another. And therefore, it can set the company apart from the competition and create these advantages. It can also result in reduced costs, as you can see here in the graph to the right. And PwC, they released a report in 2023 on circular business models in electronics. So looking at consumer electronics, industrial electronics, and ICTs, it showed that product as a service has significant potential to reduce costs over time compared to linear business models. Because raw materials, production, and end of life costs, they are reduced as the product lives longer. It delivers more life cycles and lasts longer. Right, and on that note, we have the third reason regarding resource efficiency and environmental impact. So by retaining the responsibility of the product and keeping the ownership of the product, companies are incentivized to create more durable products and to work with repairability, to work with maintenance, and also refurbishment to make the product last as long as possible. So in the same report by PwC on electronics, we can see that product as a service business models, they could reduce emissions by 36% looking at consumer electronics. You see here to the left. And the reason here is also that you have this extended life and additional use cycles of the product. So in conclusions, there are many reasons why companies are exploring product as a service, as a business model. Still, yes, as you can see here on the screen, this is not a done deal, of course. In theory, product as a service is a very compelling business model, but in practice, it can be quite difficult and complex to implement. And this makes it even more important that companies spend sufficient time on finding the model that is the right fit for them. So this is what my colleague Felicia will talk more about right now. So Felicia, please go ahead.
Yes, and now you should be able to see me as well. Thank you, Stena, for that introduction. And I also just want to, for those who came a little late, just if you have any questions, please post them in the chat and we will try to answer as many as possible in the end of this session. So I will talk briefly about how to identify a servitization model that is the right fit for your business. It's quite a large topic, but we will share some initial insights. So there are a few points that both the right business model and the right products need to fulfill. And basically, it of course has to solve important pain points for the customer. That is key. It also has to provide strong added value, both perhaps real and both perceived. And then it also needs to match your organization's unique capabilities. And to solve important pain points, one thing to think about is that the provider of the product should be a better owner of the product than the customer would be. And that is basically a good start. So there are some good general product characteristics that improve the likelihood of that, and therefore also the likelihood of a successful product as a service offering. And from a customer perspective, those are the products that are usually more expensive to buy, because then having as a service can be more appealing because it might reduce upfront cost. It's also products that are difficult or expensive to maintain and repair, or products that are basically like a key part of the customer's daily operations and therefore very expensive or not great if they're not working. Because those 2 points can really help the provider of the product to generate more value to the customer through servitization. And then from a customer point of view, especially consumers usually tend to want to own the products that are very emotionally important or connected to them. So those are the products that usually are a bit more difficult to servitize. And from a provider point of view, you are much better at kind of providing value to the customer through services if the product is durable and feasible to repair and maintain so that you can actually do it. That it has a modular product design, because then you can upgrade it and create value that way. And that it has a high material or secondhand value, and that it's a smart or connected product, because that is also a key way to learn more about your customer and therefore be able to deliver more services and more value to your customer. So once you have identified a product that you think is suited for servitization, our recommendation is to try to consider all relevant value dimensions when designing your offering. So for professional segments, financial and functional value creation is key. And for this segment, customers also tend to know their total cost of ownership. So they know kind of what is the cost of this product throughout its life cycle. And this means that financial value creation is not only about reducing the upfront purchasing cost, but it's also key to try to think about how you might reduce other costs for your customers, such as improving efficiency, maybe reducing admin or even risk. And second, we have the functional value creation, which is, of course, also key. And one of the reasons many B2B customers choose product as a service is that it can enable them to focus more on their core activities, while someone else can manage kind of other operations related to that equipment or product that you otherwise would have to do yourself. And as an add-on, we also see the product service has the potential to generate strategic benefits, such as improved agility or maybe mitigation of technology lock-in. So these are also benefits that you can try to communicate to your customer. And for consumer segments, in terms of product as a service, they are usually a bit trickier, because product as a service is in ways less mature for these type of customers. And one thing that makes them a bit hard is that consumers are not always great at understanding their total cost of ownership, and they might not always value their own time in savings, and they might also not always be very aware of long-term savings in, for example, money. So I think consumers in general try to usually underestimate like the cost of owning a car by like 40%. So it's very typical here that it's a bit more difficult to try to convince about the financial value creation. But what's key here instead is that in order to avoid having or go into the trap of the customer only comparing the subscription cost to the cost of buying the product, is to try to position yourself as your service as a very different value offering in order to avoid that. And in terms of functional value creation, that matters here too, of course. So customers tend to prioritize convenience, flexibility, ease of use, and for trend-sensitive buyers, it's also the potential to upgrade that might be important. And as a last point on the consumer side, consider also the emotional and social aspects of your offering. So aligning with the values of the customer, even if it's like offering the latest technology or maybe caring about sustainability, it also both can contribute to making the experience more meaningful. And when working with your customer journey, our recommendation is to also try to engage directly with your customer to see how your product as a service offering kind of stacks up against their current experience, and also try to stay objective in that process and not make too many unvalidated assumptions about what the customer is thinking and feeling about different aspects. So once you understand what adds value to your customer, it's also key to try to match that to your organization's unique capabilities. So ideally, we want to be in the upper right quadrant of this graph, because then we have the potential to generate high customer value and we have strong capabilities. And this is kind of the sweet spot where you see that if you end up here with your idea for your product and service offering, it's a very good foundation. But of course, you might also end up in the upper left quadrant. So maybe you find a way that something that would generate a lot of customer value, but you don't have all the capabilities that you need. And it's a signal that in order to capitalize on that opportunity, you of course might need to develop those capabilities. And that might take some resources and potentially also require a strategic shift in your company. So maybe a bit of a longer road if you're in the upper left box. But even if you, no matter where you find yourself, like on that graph, even if your capabilities somewhat align with the customer value you have identified, you still need to basically be prepared to acquire new ones if you aim to develop a product as a service offering and maybe go from having products and services today. Because selling a product and selling product as a service are fundamentally different in many ways. So if you look at this graph, most companies start in the bottom left corner. So they might have a product. Let's say I have a bike, and I might add some services to that, for example, maintenance. And then if I want to take another step at this kind of servitization ladder, I might go towards product leasing. So leasing my bikes to the customer. Then I also need to be prepared to acquire capabilities in financing on top of the ones in service delivery product I already need to have. And then if I want to move to maybe a product access model, so offering bikes to customer, but based on subscription perhaps, then I need to be very good at designing the experience. So designing the service from the moment the customer signs up to that service to the moment they use it, return it, and ends the agreement, basically. So I have to be really good at service design on top of the other things, as well as selling access and not selling products, because those are also very different. So you need to be able to sell the performance or the access to the product and not only the product ownership, which is the way we usually sell things today. Another step up the ladder would be to move towards product function. And then data analytics and risk assessment also become key. So for example, if I'm Rolls-Royce, that's one of the examples Stina mentioned, and I'm offering uptime, my revenue will be tied to that outcome. So any risk of downtime or failure will basically be a risk to my revenue streams. So I must be really good at trying to identify and mitigate any of those risks. So in summary here, the more steps you take on this servitization ladder, the more pressing the need to invest in new capabilities will become. And this will, of course, also come at a cost, as most things do, which brings us to the next part of the presentation. And finance is a very broad topic, but we will give you some first things to think about when you are developing your product as a service offering. So once you understand kind of how to create value and which capabilities you need, most companies will come to also face the question of, well, how do I finance it, and how do I finance maybe the pilot and maybe the scale up and maybe the mature business? And there are two things to try to consider when finding the right setup. And the first one I would say is to try to identify like what are all the options we have to bridge the cost revenue gap, which we will address in a few minutes. And then try to use every aspect of the business model in order to increase your chances of securing financing. And the cost revenue gap, it basically refers to the transition period that you have in a product service model that can cause financial strains. So when you develop your model, it's very common that you need to invest in capabilities, as we talked about, and you need to invest maybe in new assets. This will drive costs. So you see the green line in this diagram. And at the same time, we have this switch from upfront revenue streams to recurring revenue streams. So instead of getting all the money up front for the products I sell, I get money over time for the products I provide as access or as an outcome-based business model. And over time, when the existing product stock can be leveraged, we have better efficiency, we have maybe customer retention that improves, financial stability will also improve. So this is a transitional period, or should be a transitional period for a product service model. And then you will be able to reap the long-term benefits once you progress over time. But basically, to try to handle this gap, companies typically use three types of financing solutions. And the first one is pretty straightforward. We have direct financing. And that means that companies finance assets directly with either maybe internal or external funds. So that could be like debt, equity, grants. And it's good because it helps you have a full control of the transition and of your assets. It's very good, therefore very good also for testing and piloting product as a service offerings on small scale. And it's also a pretty low barrier compared to the other options. But the drawback is that you might have some potential capital strain and also, of course, repayment obligations, which might be difficult for some companies to handle. And then we have another type of financing solution, which is sale leaseback, which is pretty common in product as service. And it's basically that you sell your assets to another financier who then leases them back to you as an operator. And it serves the purpose of reducing the upfront cost and spreading risk as the company do not own the assets. And it works very well for asset-intensive companies that need the liquidity in order to mature and scale that maybe is not possible if they have to buy a lot of very expensive assets upfront. But some of the drawbacks of this are that you first don't own the products, so you have reduced control of them potentially, and you might also end up with a higher cost at the end. And then another option is a dedicated vehicle, which means that you if you want to develop a product service offering and maybe have a different business model today, you might choose to set it up in a different company. So you create a separate entity to kind of manage and fund the product as a service operations. And this is good because it isolates the risk from the parent company. And it might also give you perhaps like access to a larger pool of external capital because actors can invest only in the product as a service venture. So it's therefore also very common to use for companies that have this large scale and high risk product as a service models, but want to keep them kind of separate from the parent company so they don't impact the finances that way. So no matter kind of what decisions you take regarding what type of financing solutions are the right for you, because it will very much depend on your business model, of course, your customer and your product. But what we would recommend there is to try to think about, like, no matter the route you take, try to think about all the aspects of the product as service business model in order to improve your chances of securing external financing. So the first one is assets. So assets can be used as collateral sometimes. And for that to be possible and for financiers to feel confident with that, they need to be able to assess the value of the asset and potentially also liquidate it. And there's basically two ways to achieve this. So the first one is to work with the product design of the assets. So try to design it for value retention to show to financiers that this is an asset that will have a stable value over time and is also worth something over time. And the second one is to build or tap into an existing aftermarket. And the secondhand market for cars is a very good example of a functioning secondhand market, because that is used by a lot of different industries, for example, insurance, to try to, in order to evaluate the value of the secondhand car and also make sure it can be potentially liquidated. So try to build or tap into that if it already exists for your asset. And the second aspect to consider is, of course, the customers. So customers can provide indirect security and reduce also the perceived risk of the business model itself. So there are basically two ways to go here. The first one is to use or try to showcase that you have large and long contracts with creditworthy customers. And that can help you show that you have some stability in the business model over time. However, it's not always super compatible with the product as service model, because sometimes customers don't want, it can kind of defeat the purpose with PaaS that you have long contracts, because you might want to have the flexibility of selecting a different type of equipment, etc. So if that's not feasible, then you can try to demonstrate a sufficient mass of subscriptions instead. And if you show that you have a lot of either people or companies that have signed up for your service, then you can show that you also have a reliable revenue stream and that you have time to, worst case, sell your assets if the customer retention would decline. So it's kind of a risk mitigation measure as well. And the third one, and maybe most important, is of course the business case. You should always be able to demonstrate a good business case for your business model, no matter what it is. But for product as a service model, do also your best to try to demonstrate profitability over time compared to a product sales model. And this might require you to kind of adjust the time period maybe for comparison, if it takes longer maybe than normal it normally would do. Or also to try to monetize or highlight the cost of linear risk. So this can be, for example, reduced exposure to supply chain disruptions, or maybe fluctuating raw material cost. And the second aspect here is to manage growth rates. So basically, don't grow too fast, because for a product service model, the profitability often peaks later in the product lifecycle when the assets have been depreciated, but they also continue to generate value. So growing too fast can hinder profitability from taking place, basically. And the last aspect here to work with is the relationships you have, both with your financiers, but also your customers and actors in the value chain. So some companies do use, for example, co-financing or prepayments to ease kind of the financial strain. And this can be used, or this can be used both so for actors in the value chain, but you might also require co-financing from your customers in order to serve them or deliver the product service offering. However, it should also be noted that it's also not always attractive. So it really depends on the type of customer relationship you have and the product, etc., as it can also reduce flexibility. But another aspect that also is very key in relation to your relationships is to build partnerships. And those partnerships can be in very different areas, but one area is with actors that can realize the asset value over time. So they can help you show that you have the capability to keep the value of the assets and you can improve it over time. And that can be, for example, actors in repair, refurbishment, maintenance, but those that are key to deliver your product as a service model. So in summary, which of these are more important for you will depend, of course, on the unique context of your business, of your product, and of your customer. But I would recommend considering all of these, at least, when developing your business model, and see what will be the most important for you moving forward. So now I will hand over to you, Peter, to talk about the first steps of implementation.
Yes, thank you, Felicia, for the insights, and I'll try to share some insights of how to get started. Maybe we'll take the next slide. Yes, so how to get started? Well, as Stena mentioned, it can be pretty complex to start a product service model. So having a plan and the foundation in place will hopefully make it more manageable and, of course, hopefully increase the success rate of this. So if you look at the first one is to set a strong foundation. It is make sure that we have a base that will support the entire project, including a dedicated team, senior leadership support, and define a clear vision, purpose that hopefully should align with your overall business goal. Second is to build a roadmap that will help you guide you in this transition, whether it's from a small pilot or when you're going to scale it up across different markets, different product areas. And this roadmap should also include the ability to gather different insights and allow you to adjust over time how this should be done. Because you might start out with an idea and a plan, but as you get insights, both from your customers, your business partners that you are teaming up with, but also from the organization internally, you need to adjust how you're doing this in order to make sure that you have, back to the foundation, the strong foundation for scaling over time. In the next couple of slides, we will dive a little deeper into each of these steps and try to share some of our insights from different products. First of all, when we talk about strong foundation, we see these three key actions. The most important one, as we have seen from successful projects, is having a focused team starting out with this. Make sure it includes people from key departments. Often it's from the product department, finance department, people working with customer success, and IT people. So you can get a lot of insights from different angles, different roles within an organization in order to start this. I think a lot of companies have different product models that you can use for this. But of course, such a low thing as a kickoff, make sure everybody's aligned, make sure there is a clear description of who is responsible for what, make sure that the foundation is in place. Second is to get senior support. Make sure that when you are starting this up, that you have the attention, of course, from the senior team in your company, your department, your division, so you have access to guidance, resources, and also time for this. It's always good to get some kind of champion that you can help you move your way through the organization and make sure that this also have attention to the right places. And finally, make sure there's a kind of a clear vision and goal for your product or service. What is you want to achieve? Is it increase in revenue? Is it launching into a particular market? Is it a way to get some new customers? Is it a way to go from transaction sales to have an ongoing relationship? So what is the vision of your product service, and what goals are you trying to achieve? And make sure, of course, these are well documented and are manageable so you can follow up over time. The next slide, please. When you start doing this roadmap to ensure your progress and success, we see kind of 3 overall steps. First steps, and I think Felicia and Stina has been addressing this in their slides, is of course to analyze and plan. So understand what your customers need, how is your product fit for product and service, what kind of gains and needs do we fulfill towards the customers, and also, of course, be honest to your own product. Is there places where you need to adjust the product in order to be successful? Second, launch a small pilot, because whatever people have thought and think about customers' reaction, resellers' reaction, things are changing. So in order to change your approach, to make sure that you do it correctly when you're going big scale, we always recommend and see the most successful projects have started small, because that's where you can learn, that's where you can follow on a very simple way each customer that are starting with product service, and make sure that you have an ongoing feedback mechanism in place when you're doing this, so you can gather this, evaluate it, and conclude on it. Phase 3, and that is where, when the pilot results in hand, you have tested some different solutions, you have adjusted based on your findings, you're ready to make a strategic scale. So, and even that you start scaling, always still keep monitoring that people are performing as expected, customers are still engaging with you, because the customers you get in a pilot might be a little different with the client that you're getting in a scale. Anything from behavior, usage of your products, the credit valid of your customer, they might change over time. So you kind of have to keep monitoring this. Just next slide, please. As we kind of approach a full-scale scale-out, we still need to keep focus on a matrix and improvement in order to automate our success. So make sure that there is some defined success matrix. It could be customer success, it could be revenue growth. Make sure that you have set up automatic system, could be end of a purchase, you get some feedback from the customers. Make sure to monitor, interview internally, how is this acting, how it's working, has the assumption from your pilot been fulfilled, or do you need again to change things? No projects within product service turns out as you start planning in the beginning, because customers act differently than anticipated. People change behavior over time, but it's important to keep collecting these changes and act on these. So don't underestimate the time to make these feedback loops, and keep doing it, and not think that, well, it's going good, so let's keep moving on. The third part is make sure to automate your key process, because it's simple with few contracts to do it manually. But as you start getting volume, start to scaling up, if you don't have thinking about automating it, you might get overwhelmed by manual work, and then it might ruin the product, the earnings on the product and service, but also might lead to a lot of mistakes and errors that are difficult to handle over time. And of course, keep revisiting the findings we had from the pilot and also the new findings. So to kind of summarize or the final words for this, how to start, it is, as many things, get the right team in place, make sure it's a manageable team, it's a team that knows their responsibility and represent different angles from the company. Start small with a pilot, but think big from day one, because when you want to scale it, you need to have the feedback loops in place. You need to make sure that you have the right matrix, understand the client's behavior, but also make sure that you have thought about how to automate this over time. Yes. And back to you, Stina. I think you will do some Q&As.
Yes, that's right. Okay, thank you very much, Peter, for sharing those first steps on the PaaS journey. And looking at time, I think we have time for a little question. So, Peter, from your perspective, what do you think are the primary challenges businesses encounter when they implement product as a service model? And how does your software help to address these challenges?
I think what people sometimes underestimate is that as you're offering product service, you might have sub-suppliers that help with part of the product service. You may have user-based models, different pricing. So it starts to getting complex, both in terms of how to build it, how to measure and monitor it, but also how to make sure that it's not so manual that it takes too many man hours in order to handle it. So you can say what we and other systems are trying to help is to make sure that you can handle it easy, you could scale it over time, and you can make sure to handle different kind of contracts. Should it be user-based? Should it be a combined of user-based, different tire levels, and so forth. So it's make sure that you can automate it and make sure that it's scalable.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Peter. Looking at the time here, I see that we don't have so much time left, so I think we were gonna wrap things up here. And if you have any more questions or thoughts that you would like to share, you're more than welcome to reach out to us, of course. Also, if you want to learn more about product as a service, there are a few resources that we recommend, as you can see here on the screen. So we have our own report on product as a service, but also publications from Systemic, PVC, and the newly released PAC report. So we will send this out and links, of course, in the follow-up email. Yes, and yeah, as I said, we will send out this email with our contact information and also the recording of this event. We will also send out a follow-up survey so that you are more than welcome to answer. Also, we'd like to recommend our next seminar on plastics on December 3rd, where we will dig deep into plastics and why this is such a complex problem to solve. This information you will also find in the email that we will send out to you. So we hope that you sign up for that as well. So, but with that, we thank you very much for listening in to today's seminar, and we wish you a continued pleasant afternoon. Thank you very much.